Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
It's important that I tell you what is the last thing I did before I sat down to record today's Cut the Clutter. It was to share with you the video version or on-camera version of Lieutenant General H.S. Panag's column. He writes a weekly column for us because that is the best explanation for what is happening on the southern bank of Pangong Tso, and then again on this high features on what is called as Kailash range, and I'll explain to you why. Going up to Rechinla, where action over the last 2 weeks has been confined. Now, these names, Rechinla, Rezangla, Magar Hill, Gurung Hill, Spangor Gap, Chushul Bowl, these are all imprinted in our memory, particularly on the memory of those of us who were around when the 62 war took place. Because these are areas around which a lot of pitched battles took place. Movies have been made about them. But to make sense of what is happening there and why this excitement over the past 10 days in this area of a frontage of about 30 to 40 kilometers like this. So to understand the significance of this, you need a military teacher, and General Panag is a good military teacher, and I'm quite proud to have drawn my wisdom from him for today. Essentially, also a lot of other reading and experience and background reading that I might have been doing, and the other soldiers or ex-soldiers that I might have been speaking with over the last several days. Now what's happened is, overnight between 29th and 30th August, Indian Army took some proactive or preemptive steps. Now that is something that we have not seen Indian Army do vis-a-vis the Chinese in a long time. So they took preemptive steps. They went up and occupied the ridges, the high ridge line, which in our view belongs to us. It's within our perception of the line of actual control. China also accepts all of it except one feature that is called Black Top, or sometimes our army calls it Kala Top also, that they claim is in their area. But as General Panag tells you, and also our own authorities tell us, it is not across the line of control. But the Chinese are very sensitive about that one feature in particular, and I will tell you why. Now understand what exactly has happened. What's happened is that Indian Army, now for the first time in this 4-month standoff, has changed the status quo in a region. So far, all proactivity came from the Chinese. So what exactly has happened on the ground? Let me try and explain in 3 or 4 quick points. First of all, our forces thought the Chinese were trying to again act proactively in this area as they had done on the north bank of Pangong Tso and in Depsang and in Galwan, although there the forces are separated now, and one part of Gogra Hot Springs. One is separated, one still has some complications. But in each of those cases, the Chinese had made the first move, and after that India was defending, or India was trying to restore the status quo. But they were altering the status quo. So in this case again, there was suspicion that they were trying to alter the status quo by coming up to the ridgeline on what is called as the Kailash range. It's called Kailash range because from one end to the other, it reaches what is the Kailash Parbat or Mount Kailash. And it's about 360 kilometers from west to the east, a little bit north to the south also. It's very difficult to explain directions like that without a map behind you, but you can see the map. In fact, I'm using the maps. 2 maps I'm using are from General Panag's article. There is nothing confidential about these maps. These are US State Department maps based on satellite imagery and the drawing of line of actual control, which is the Indian line of actual control, the Chinese claim line, the international border. Those are all done by General Panag with a thick pen. So there is no claim of these being precise or these being accurate, but these are indicatively very accurate and very important. So understand that. Now you have this Kailash range. Why is this Kailash range in this area, this frontage of about 35-40 kilometers, so important? Starting on the one end, I'd say with Helmet Top, or even before that, something called Thukang. which is on the south bank of Pangong Tso. North bank is so far where the action has been as yet, because that is where those fingers are. Remember, we keep explaining to you that the fingers are like this, like our knuckles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Chinese claim that they own up to finger 2. India claims that India owns up to finger 8. In the past, both have been patrolling as far as the other would let them go. It's only lately that the Chinese have come up to finger 4, and given half a chance, they would try to push to finger 2 as well. Action now is at the other end of Pangong Tso. So if you see the map on the southern bank of Pangong Tso, you will see that this feature called helmet top generally coincides with finger 4. If Chinese have their argument that, look, if we control up to finger 4, this also we control. They control area this side of Pangong Tso bank, but that area is overlooked by higher features. Helmet is one of those higher features that India believes is within Indian line of control, and I think we are quite right on this one. Obviously, I'm on our side, but if I did not believe something, maybe I will walk around it and not say it as emphatically, but most certainly it's on our side. It's just that after 1962, India never went up to occupy the ridge line, because if the line of control, actual control, is defined at the ridge line, if you go and man the ridge line at the top, one, it's very uncomfortable, it's very demanding, weather conditions are very bad, supplies are very challenging, but also it puts you eyeball to eyeball with the other side. So the idea was to create a distance, because to move too close was seen to be as escalatory. Those equations have now changed, because after the way the Chinese have moved in over the past few months, it does look like that now it's grab as grab can, or whoever moves into a territory keeps it. So there India decided not to take any chances, and India got its forces up on the entire ridge line. If you see this ridge line, generally it will go from helmet top, then facing finger 4 from the other side, to black top, which as you can see is generally facing finger 8 from the other side. Now if that area facing the coast or the beach facing finger 4 to finger 8 is in Chinese control, that's lower. The ridge line overlooking that now is manned fully by Indian troops. You can understand what that means, because Chinese have their communication coming in from behind. Behind Pangong Tso is another lake called Spangur Tso. Originally the international border, as India inherited in 1947, international border passes through Spangur Tso. So it's not that far. And that is somewhere where highway G219, that is the very important Tibet-Xinjiang highway, also passes. In fact, this is the area where the gap between the line of actual control and the international border is the narrowest. It's also true that most of this area is not what the Chinese had taken earlier by stealth as part of their Exaichen grab, but these were areas that they captured in 1962 and never vacated. Obviously, they wanted to create a little frontage between their highway and the Indian line and the line of actual control with India. So now getting on to this ridge line, which is the highest feature here, India threatens all of this Chinese communication, its highway, and the rest coming in from behind. And the Chinese see it as a big threat. Now, the other thing that you have to look at geographically, once again, we are not tacticians or strategists, but we can keep our eyes open, and everybody knows that one who has the higher ground does better than the one who has the lower ground. It's like the old thing that we used to play as children, हम तुम्हारी ऊंच पे, हम तुम्हारी नीच पे, right? So जिसके पास ऊंच है, उसके पास फायदा है. Now there is a gap, flatter terrain within this range. It's like a gap within the range, within the Kailash range, and that gap is called, on the Chinese side or Chinese controlled side, it's called Spangur Gap, because it comes in from Spangur Lake, On the Indian side, it's called the Chushul Bowl. Chushul is also where India has an air base. It's been there for a long time. It was there even during the 1962 war. Chushul is very important for India because it is from Chushul that you have a road going straight to Leh, or that is the heartland of Ladakh. So under any circumstances, India will defend Chushul. That's one. For the Chinese to attack Chushul or try to make a big entry into Ladakh, into the Indian heartland of Ladakh or Ladakh's heartland in India, they have to come through the Spangur Gap into Chushul Bowl. Why? Because Spangur Gap with a frontage of about 4 kilometers by 6 kilometers gives you a flat surface. It is still altitude, it's still almost 15,000 feet, 14,000 feet, but it is flat, reasonably flat. So you can drive tanks, you can drive armored vehicles, you can drive artillery, you can drive rocket launchers, and you can also move in large bodies of forces through it. And when you come to the Chushul Bowl, once again, because it is flat land, you can operate at a higher force level instead of the usual mountain warfare of one company defending against a battalion, a hill feature, or a battalion trying to take a hill feature from a company. Then it no longer stays like that. So a big battle can break out between these mountains. On the other hand, if India were to decide to take the offensive, then the one place where India can induct a large number of forces, including armor, artillery, large bodies of troops, is through Chushul Bowl in India going into the Spangur Gap. That's why Spangur Gap, Chushul Bowl is this very crucial area which is vital for both sides' defense, also which is a vital option for both sides should they decide to go on the offensive. Now for the Chinese, just as for India, it makes India very vulnerable if the Chinese move in through Spangur Gap, because then you have a pretty much straight line of communication to Leh. On the Chinese side, this gets perilously close to their Tibet-Xinjiang highway, and also it gets perilously close to what is the international boundary on the Indian map. In fact, from where the Indian troops sit now on the ridgeline, in some places it's not even 10 miles. So you then understand, and between that 10 miles is this dog's breakfast of Spangur Tso, of Pangong Tso on this side, mountains behind, ridgelines, higher ridgelines under Indian control, distant ridgelines with Chinese control, a gap in the middle. So two things happen. One, that Spangur Gap through which Chinese would have liked to move in or threaten India with large bodies of forces, that is now hemmed in by all these heights. Magar Hill, Gurung Hill is a bit lower, Helmet Top, Black Top, Rekinla, Rizangla, Indian territory, but now it's all manned by well-armed soldiers with very good resources. So anybody coming into that bowl or that Spangur Gap then faces the wrath of fire and surveillance and everything coming in from all these directions. Second, the troops and the units and the infrastructure that the Chinese have on the south bank of Pangong Tso, that gets threatened should India choose to threaten it, because that now is in the direct line of sight of this Indian troops sitting on these ridges. So to that extent, the tactical and strategic balance in that area has been restored. So this is where we are. Now, if you ask me, I don't believe that India wants to invade this part of Chinese controlled territory. If you ask me again, who knows what's in the Chinese minds, but they know the price of trying to do something very adventurous in this area. Say someone like General Panag thinks that they will try and do what they had done in 1962, that is try and take these heights one by one and clear Indian forces out of there. Will the Chinese risk a firefight for that? I will be surprised if they do, but at the same time, you can't rule out anything. It's also true that India has now gone. I know you must have heard the noise of an aircraft. These are the telltale 4 engines of a C-130 which just flew overhead to Palam Airport in Delhi. Nevertheless, the Chinese also know that to try and take anything by force will entail a very large cost. Once war breaks out or fighting breaks out, who knows who wins, who loses, what happens. But as the old Confucian saying goes, when two neighbors decide to go to war, the first thing they must do is each one must build a grave on his own side, because both sides will suffer damage. So are the Chinese willing to take that damage, or will they keep baiting India into a Galwan kind of clash? I don't know. If you ask me what my wish is that the two sides now see that the game the Chinese played is a game that the other side can also play, and both sides are playing it. Once you start this, it can start in other areas also. So maybe it's better now to talk at a higher level. I know that our foreign ministers are talking tomorrow in Moscow, but maybe this should now be escalated at the Xi Jinping, Narendra Modi level, and the two countries should go back to where they were, because nobody is going to gain anything in case this turns into a firefight. Also, big countries go to war with each other, or kill each other's people, or exchange fire, or get into a warlike situation when they have a big strategic objective. They don't do it to settle score over something that happened 58 years ago, or they don't do it just to get a couple more headlines. What you will see, however, that this situation will remain on the razor's edge, particularly in this part of Ladakh, because this is where we Indians have gone and poked the Chinese dragon in both its eyes. It's not used to that. So let us see how does it react. For now, it is reacting by psychological warfare. So you've seen these mysterious Twitter handles under funny Chinese names, but these are all based in Pakistan. These are all ISI operations. Showing some video of some soldiers, apparently Chinese, pushing Indians into water. At that resolution, you don't even know who's pushing whom and how old these videos are. You also have videos coming in from the Chinese propaganda side, Global Times, etc., saying, oh, Pangong Tso Lake is ours, we have a resort here and we have tourist boats. It's true, because the fact is that 2/3 of Pangong Tso in any case belongs to China. So just as tourists go on the Indian side of Pangong Tso, on the southern bank, which is where you saw Amir Khan and Kareena Kapoor and the rest, on the other side of the same lake, the Chinese own the territory. So in fact, Chinese own 2/3 of the Pangong Tso. So all these videos that are now coming in, Pangong Tso is now China's, come as tourists. It's all nonsense. If anything, India is going into Ladakh, don't need a special permit. Chinese going into Tibet from their side need a special permit. So please don't buy into all that propaganda. This psychological warfare will now go on. This will not directed at the Indian Armed Forces. Indian Armed Forces know how to deal with all of this, because they do the real business and they are tough. But this is directed at people like us. This is directed at Indian public opinions. So once again, if I may give you some advice, don't fall into this trap. Whether you like Narendra Modi, don't like Narendra Modi, you like this government, don't like this government, but don't just start sharing this propaganda and psychological warfare for cheap thrills, because this will not benefit anybody. And second, you are not striking a blow for truth. You are actually striking a blow for nonsense and propaganda.